of happy and healthy.
Walgreens participates as a preferred network pharmacy in your area with Express Scripts and United Healthcare. Top plans based on 2015 Medicare enrollment data. Walgreens participates with other plans. See walgreens.com/Medicare for details.
All right, another great installment of Younger Life Live here with Rick Federici, Mary Anthony on her ride-in. A little bit crazy today, Nate, with the weather. Was it okay for you on your ride-in this morning, huh?
Yeah, so I have a truck without four-wheel drive, and I have yet this year to put any weight in the back. So I played every time we turn, or am I going to die game coming in.
I am so with you this morning. It's funny you bring that up here on Younger Life Live, and you're thinking about staying younger longer here. Your flagship station, of course, on the radio, WIMS and WIMSradio.com. I was on my ride-in on one of the big arteries, 20, and I'm cranking in from 20 all the way down Burns Harbor into Chesterton, Indiana, through the Pines and into Michigan City. 2 times, Nate, a truck spun in front of me, went into the opposite lanes and spun right back in front of me. And it's funny because the first thing I was in my mind going, this dude needs to have like some salt or some big bricks. Yeah. So what kind of a truck do you don't have 4-wheel drive? Or
I don't, no. So my neighbor came to me and said, hey, I know a guy getting rid of a truck for $500. Do you want it? I want anything that runs, right, for $500. So I bought it, but it doesn't have 4-wheel drive or anything. It doesn't have any of that stuff. So in the wintertime, it's been an exercise in having faith that I'm going to get to where I need to go. So it was fun.
Faith is the operative word. Mary Anthony made it.
Welcome to the party.
Oh my goodness, that was a trip in. Couple trains, couple people slide off, and I'm thinking, oh dear Lord, not me, please. Nothing bad though, just.
So happy to have you here. Big hugs from across.
Yes, Nate, it's so nice to meet you.
Nice to see you. So question here, guys. So when you get in a car wreck, or when you get in when you think you're going to get in a car wreck, what's the thought that goes through your mind? Do you think, Jesus take the wheel, or do you think I'm going to die? Where are you at on that?
I try to stay calm. I try to stay calm. So instead, it sounds so funny, but I'm always going, okay, God. I literally say that, which sounds funny. A couple times I slid and think, okay, God, calm. Like I can calm down.
Yeah. It feels just like an hour in that one little
it's like just Nate. It's like it's like
okay, so slow-mo.
Here's the Rick Federici answer to that. I do my rosary every day on the way in because I commute from Schaumburg.
Okay.
So it's 87 miles to Girard Media's WIMS and then another 40 up to the other station in St. Joe. So when I get here today, usually about an hour and 15, so about 2.5 hours, on the ride in. But as I do it, I'm always thinking, but I always say to the big G, I'm always saying I'm sorry for what I've done. So I'm hoping that St. Peter's going to be right there at the gates going, dude, you're in, because I was an altar boy, went to Catholic school, not throwing religion into this, but I love the big G, and I teach my children that, and I throw it out on the air because I can and I will. And you know what I'm saying? And I really feel that at a place in your life and in your soul and in your heart, because I pray for, there's a lot of people out there every day that don't utilize the power of prayer, or maybe don't focus on their religious background if they have one, and it's to each his own. That's how I was raised.
Absolutely.
But I do feel that hopefully he's going to be like, cool. I do always say this when I'm doing the rosary. I always say, Mary, I really want to meet you someday, because I really want to, you have him in your heart and stuff, but that's just me. That's just Ricky. So there you go. As I'm spinning around, there are a lot of times that I am on the roadways and they're like, this is crazy. I'm going to myself. This is flipping crazy. I have 2 kids and a wife, and I don't want to die this way.
Yeah.
I just don't want, here's the problem. If my truck flipped over, all the crud in my car would go out on the roadway and be like,
embarrassing. That would be me.
I don't want to be
we live in our van. It feels like we're in our van so much. Please, we have so much garbage and stuff in
Nate,
there.
I
It'd be
always say I've
embarrassing.
got the suitcase full of clothes. Like even today, I'm like, oh, I said to my wife, I think I might have to stay today. And it's not that I don't want
really?
to stay, but I'd rather get the 5 hours in my own bed
Sure.
or the 4 hours
Oh,
in my
absolutely.
own bed than to sit there and just with your eyes open going,
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm just up.
Yeah.
But I got so much work done this morning when I got here, so it was nice.
Oh man.
So I'm glad you're here, safe and
Oh,
sound.
I kept thinking, oh, dear Lord, let me get there at least 2 minutes before I'm turning on. Somebody had just slid right here by the pines too, just slid off. But they were okay. Somebody was already helping them.
Nate, she was hoping that when we heard that beautiful female voice going,
yeah, I'm thinking,
she was running into
I'm like,
Sid.
no, I'm here. I'm here. That's what I was trying for. Yeah. One more minute,
Yes,
but oh well,
please.
it's the way it goes.
Hey, 5
It is
kids,
what it
a
is.
working mom.
You
Well,
did
just
it.
try.
You
Yeah, I
did it.
just got
You're the
everybody
hero.
where they
Thank
needed to
you.
go. It's just
And I was
how good.
thinking, Nate.
And
'cause-
2 trains.
Yes. And I was thinking, Nate, seriously, you know how we are. We love having guests in.
Oh, I
and you're
know it.
young and hip. And it's like, I so love having people in studio. And you cranked over this way, probably going like this.
Like, I don't even know
I-
what to do right now. You just called me young and hip, and
Yeah, there you
I'm speechless. I really am. Young and hip. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
We love it.
All right, so tell us who you are. Obviously, for our
Sure.
WIMS radio fans, and for those watching us
Mm-hmm.
right now, a little bit about Nate. Nate, and how do you say your last name? It's French, right?
Yeah, it'd be Laux. Yeah.
Laux.
Together, 1, 2, 3.
Laux.
Yeah,
That's
great,
very, very cool.
Great. Yeah, so I am from LaPorte County, actually Rolling Prairie area, which I
Oh,
think
yeah.
you're from, right? Or you're
I'm
really-
Union Mills.
You're Union
From
Mills,
Union
okay,
Mills,
yeah.
yeah.
So I'm from the Rolling Prairie area. And I pastor a church here in LaPorte called State Street Community Church, which we planted almost 6 years ago. And I'm the president of a food providing organization called the PAC Center. And so
Cool.
the church, just a couple years ago, we actually, about a year ago actually, were gifted a building, a former nightclub and bar, and we were able to move some of our social ministries, our food pantry, our clothes pantry, community meal into that space there at 605 Washington Street in LaPorte. And so so that's what I do.
Really cool.
I'm anxious to continue to work in LaPorte. We got a lot of great things coming in LaPorte as a church and as a community center. So
I love the concept we're going to be talking about today, the art of neighboring. But
Yeah.
before we get into it, could you tell me the concept of plant a church?
yeah, no, this is
That's
great.
just this is a little different,
Yeah,
I know,
no, this
but
is great. Good question. So I was a pastor at a Methodist church in Galena Township in LaPorte called Lamb's Chapel, and I was a pastor there for 6 years. And we came to a point where the church had grown, and we decided you can either go into an expensive campaign to add space, things like this, or we can take a group of people from that church and actually put them, or what we call plant them, into an area. Well, one of our goals was to plant in one of the more depressed areas of LaPorte, an area that was perhaps struggling, that needed a little bit of new life. And so we actually ended up finding the old Salvation Army building in LaPorte. It had been empty for about a year, and we approached them to see if we can work a financing contract. We had no money, we had no money to plant or anything like that. So we had to work out kind of an unprecedented deal with the Salvation Army, a land contract type of purchase. And fortunately, they went along with it, and they were great partners for us. We, of course, now own the building, but in the beginning, that's how we happened. So we planted there at 209 State Street in LaPorte. It's a very it's an economic struggling kind of community, but it's a fantastic community, beautiful community with great neighbors.
oh, that's really neat. That's a great concept. I was curious. I watched your
Okay.
on YouTube, so I was curious. The plant the church kind of thing was different, very different, concept. So I was curious.
It's becoming a lot more popular, especially now with, so we have this, in the last 50 years, the church in the urban centers, right? They're struggling. A lot of high church, Catholic, things like that.
Sure.
Because the community now has went out to the suburbs. And so what you're seeing now is there's a movement, not just in the church, but there's a movement to go back into the city centers. People are moving back into cities, things like that. They're rehabbing cities. They're doing all these kind of things. And so the church is doing that as well. They're coming back into the city because that's where people are. So
Can I ask
That's
a
neat.
question for those folks that are listening now? I had mentioned Catholic. You said you were Methodist.
Yep.
And now is this considered, because I find that there are a lot of people that stay with their religions, but then there are a lot of young people and folks out there that are going to what we call and what I understand is non-traditional or non-denominational. Is that kind of what you guys are? If you could explain that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to explain because a lot of non-denominational churches are, in a sense, almost anti-denominational, and we're really not. We are very inclusive of denominations. I come from a Methodist background. I also have a Church of Christ background. I'm very influenced by Anabaptist thought. And so in our church, you're going to find a very ecumenical community. We have Catholics, we have Baptists, we have non-theists, we have atheists that come. We have these different backgrounds that come together. And what I decided a long time ago is, for some people, their background, especially with more liturgical Catholic backgrounds, that's very much a part of their identity. And so I don't want to strip your Catholic background away from you. If proclaiming that you are Catholic is an important part to your identity, then let's celebrate that. Now we can still come together, we can still eat together, we can still worship together, we can do all this stuff together, but I don't find any reason to have to strip that away from our identity, especially when a lot of that is familial based. I come from a Catholic family, I come from an Episcopal family, so let's celebrate that. Let's be inclusive of the different denominations instead of anti.
I like that.
I love that.
So
I do.
do
I
I.
love that. It's very, very good.
That's an education unto itself, because you're right. You do hear the different focuses or the different scopes of that.
Yeah.
And then, so how does that work? So do you, like someone would ask, do you celebrate, what is it called, a mass? What do you guys call
so we wouldn't call it a mass, but I would have no problem calling it a mass. But it's all in the language we use. So maybe in non-liturgical, evangelical backgrounds, they're going to call it communion. We would call it Eucharist. Now, we find a lot of meaning in that word Eucharist, to give thanks, things like that. So we find there. What it does for us is it gives us permission to adapt and adopt different types of ecumenical things. So I grew up in a movement that didn't have Ash Wednesday. I find so much meaning and depth and beauty in a day of lament. And so if we find that beautiful, even though it's not a part of our background, our own theological backgrounds, why not adopt it? Why not? I had a friend who, when we started our Ash Wednesday service at State Street, said, "Don't you know that's a Catholic thing?" And I thought, why do our Catholic brothers and sisters get to own Ash Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
So let's if we find meaning and depth and beauty in it, let's use it. So let's do it, and so we do. So
This is great.
Very good.
Now, I know that's kind of like a great way to start the show,
Yeah.
get a little bit of a background. But you had brought up the art of neighboring, and you and I briefly chatted about that. Why don't you kind of take off on that a little bit and chat
Well,
with
I
Nate?
think that Pastor Nate will be better at explaining it, but it's such a great concept. Neighbors, we all have neighbors, and even those of us that don't have neighbors next door that may live, out in the country a little bit. The point is we're all neighbors because of the community that we're a part of. And so I love the talk. I love the topic and discussion around how to be a better neighbor, or what is the art of being a good neighbor. It certainly is. It's much deeper than just, grabbing your neighbor's mail if they're out of town. You know what I mean? And I love it. I really do. I love the basis of it. Is much deeper than that. And so
so we operate under this assumption that to love your neighbor, which is kind of this fundamental, at least Christian thing, is that, to love God and to love your neighbors. This is a thing that we have in our faith that stretches back into the Old Testament. And so to actually love your neighbor, then we actually believe you have to know your neighbor, right? Not like you said, not just as I know they live there, but actually to know something about them, to actually share in life with them. Now that doesn't mean that you're best friends with everyone, but it means that there's a sense of shared space.
Sure.
You're a part of this location. You're a part of making this location better. And so for us, we have a very keen sense of location. We love the community we're in. We love our neighbors, and we try to be good neighbors. We thank our neighbors for being good neighbors to us. Things like this. So what we're experiencing a lot in our work with the PAC Center is there's a tremendous poverty of loneliness in our community, and I think statistics would bear out across the country right now, right? We're more connected than we've ever been before. We have more technology. Our phones keep us connected to whoever you want. We've got computers. We've got all these things, but we're lacking community.
right.
And because there's this fear of community. We're not afraid of connection, but we're in a sense afraid of community because we don't know if we're going to get rejected or not. And so what happens is we keep our relationships very, very safe. You know, anytime you have a deeper relationship, whether you're married, whether you have a partner or whatever, there's vulnerability there, right? Because you actually have to risk something in that relationship. And the payoff could be huge. You can have a lifelong marriage with, you know, this great, deep relationship, but there's also the chance that it doesn't end that way. So the risk is huge. But the risk, we believe in neighboring, is always worth it. And so your location that you're in.
Right.
So.
Right.
Now, this appears, from what I understand, in Christian literature.
Right.
Is this exclusively kind of...
We talk about, you know, reclaiming the art of neighboring, being good neighbors, actually having a tangible ownership of your actually...
That, can you explain that,
Yeah,
Pastor?
I mean, I think, you know, I mean, I can't speak as an expert on a lot of other religions. My background and my education is all in Christianity. But I think, you know, the golden rule is the golden rule, right? Because it is a shared kind of value. And so, and we think that's true. We believe that's true. So I think this idea of reclaiming the art of neighboring is peculiarly Christian, but it doesn't have to be Christian.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
It is, if it's good for the world, if it's good for our neighbors, then it's a good thing. Now, what motivates us is our imitation of Jesus. This is what Jesus would do in the flesh, how he'd demonstrate mercy. So that's the motivating factor for the church, of course. But there's also other motivating factors that people of maybe other faiths or non-faiths would love. This is how he'd forgive. This could agree on. And so we have a lot of people at the church that come to us and they say, something with this mission resonates with us. We don't know what to do with the faith element. We don't know how that all works yet. And honestly, you know, we're all on this journey together. So these are great questions. If you can't ask these questions in the church, then where can you ask these questions, right? So, you know, I think it's a thing that resonates within all of us, somewhere deep in that part of us that asks those deeper questions, that wants to know more about why the world is the way it is, and why we have these cravings that we have for community and relationships and things like that. So.
I mean, what would you say to this? I mean, Mary, as you're scoping this out.
I love that you pointed out, you know, that you slipped in there about the golden rule. I mean, it's so true. The basis of all of it is kindness and consideration. It's not killing yourself trying to do everything for your neighbors and you know, running around and complaining about it, or even just like, oh, this is so hard. It isn't that. It's just simply being kind and welcoming. You don't have to invite them all to your house. I mean, as you're saying, it's just strictly the kindness, you know, do unto others. You know,
absolutely.
I mean, that's what I love about it. I think it's such a basic concept, but it's so overlooked and so you know, just, it seems so simple that I think people just forget to do it sometimes. And it's so important though. The lonely aspect is another thing that really hits with me. I know there are so many people that are lonely, not necessarily because, you know, maybe they don't go out, not by choice, you know, or it gets to a point that they're afraid of the rejection. So they might be a little lonely because they are afraid to reach out to someone and say, hey, could I go to church with you, or could I go to the grocery store with you? You know, just to get out, you know, I think is the lonely thing is a big deal, and people forget that easily, that, hey, I haven't seen that guy or gal out for a little while. There could be a reason. It takes 2 seconds to stop and say, hey, you know, I grabbed your mail, everything okay? You know what I mean? It could just be.
And I think right, that three of the most powerful words that we have to share with each other are what? You're not alone.
Absolutely.
Right? So as you go through life, as you go through the issues that you're going through, and I think there's this pressure on us that we have when we know somebody's struggling, that we have to fix it. And if you've ever been into problems, it's not that you don't want people to help fix issues or to help partner with you with issues, but what you need more than that is somebody that says, through the good and the bad, I'm going to walk with this with you. You know, I'm going to walk through this with you. You're not alone. Or I've been there before. You know, this is great. You know, I remember when I was newlywed, and I was, you know, you go through these issues that every newlywed goes through: communications, learning how to effectively communicate with your spouse, these kind of things. And one of the great things that somebody did for me is, you know, that just, it wasn't diminishing the problem, but it was a sense of, I've been there, you're not alone, it gets better, right? So And I think this is a sense that we can, as a church anyway, we can provide that. We don't have to fix every problem, and honestly, we can't fix every problem. But as you go through your problems, as you go through this, you're not alone. We are here with you. This is why we talk a lot about table fellowship at State Street. So the idea of table fellowship is when we share meals together. Think about a holiday. Think about you invite friends over for dinner and wine and things like that. There's this sacred bond that happens over a shared meal, and we don't think it's any kind of coincidence that the scriptures use meal. I mean, Eucharist is what? Wine and bread. And that this idea of a tangible physical sustenance brings people together. And so one of the things that we do at the PAX Center is that we have a community meal where we come together and people eat. Now, people come from different economic backgrounds, either the haves or the have-nots. We've got people that come from different racial backgrounds, people that come from all different kinds of backgrounds coming together, because we think that if we can break bread together, then the things that we believe that separate us aren't nearly as serious when you actually can put a face to the issue, right? So if we can bring more people around the table and actually learn to live with each other, learn to hear each other's voice, learn to hear each other's stories, then we see empathy increasing. We see all these things like kindness increasing. But until you bring people around the table, I don't know. So this is what neighboring was, right? You go over to your neighbor's house. You need something. You share a meal together. You care for each other. Again, it doesn't have to happen every Friday or anything, but it happens. And what we see, and I've talked to many people, and it's all anecdotal, but I think research would bear this out, that our parents probably were better neighbors than we are, because we have all kinds of different distractions that our neighbors didn't. They couldn't get on Facebook to check with people.
I was just going to say technology.
Exactly. And so if you wanted connection, you went across the street. You went to your neighbor, and they had these deeper relationships. Now, here's the thing: is I think we're missing something now, because we don't have that. And so what happens is we've got these separate enclaves of neighborhoods with separate people living separate lives, and not knowing how to connect anymore to build community, right? I mean, this bears out. So the average household, the average house size in the last 30 years has went from 1,400 square foot to 2,400 square foot, but the size of family has shrunk. We're creating more space for each other, but is that the thing that we need, is more space? Is the thing we need is actually maybe less space, and to actually live together around the table more?
Well, and it's funny, you talk about the table. We've chatted about this before here on Younger Life Live. And, you go to a restaurant stage, here's a killer perspective. Go out with your family and friends. Go out with your significant other, your children. There's a rule at our place. We sit down and we eat dinner, we break bread, we're bonding as a family. It's tough enough to get 4 people together, my 2 daughters, who are women, and my wife and I. So I say, phones away. We're bonding, and we're going to talk for 20, 30 minutes, and we all love it. It's not that, but go to a restaurant, go to a fast food place, just go out and see how many people just look around and see everybody's, doing
on
that.
their own device.
Technology craziness. And it's like, that's crazy.
It's
to me.
funny. I mean, it's sad. It's truly not funny, but my husband and I notice everywhere we go,
wow.
there will even be just 2 people,
Yes.
and they are not even speaking, and it just kills me. I think I understand sometimes we have to answer something immediate, but
so what do you think that comes from? Why is that, do you think? Is it because there's an addiction to technology, or is there a fear of getting to know one another? Or, I mean, what do you think that comes from?
I think it is a fear of not knowing first what's going on with somebody, outside of your own relationship. I think you take that for granted, so people just kind of lose that, you have to, every connection takes a little bit of work.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
agree.
I mean,
a lot of
and
work
you have to do that. Yeah. And you have to put it in. And I think people just get lax on that. And, they can't stand in the day and age that we are with people, things right away, and I mean, perfect example, my husband and I know, shame on us, we don't Facebook. And I think you would not believe how many people act like that's crazy, but we have chosen intentionally not to do that, and we just don't. I mean, it's okay. I like to hear about it, but I don't need to know what's going on. If they're a close family or friend, I'm going to know.
Yeah,
I'm going to know right away. Someone's going to let me know. I don't care what they had for dinner, where they were at. You know what I mean?
But so then it's silly things. If I'm hearing you correctly, then you have to be more intentional then with your friends, right? Because you don't have these.
That's it. You have to, and it is, and sometimes that is harder. And I find myself too getting all, life's crazy in our own little world, my own little family world, with the kids and sports, and my husband works swing shifts, so his schedule's crazy.
Sure.
So we're always, I get lost in that and think, oh, I need to call. I haven't talked to her in a while. I need to call her. It does take intention. You have to make yourself do that sometimes, but you're always so thankful when you do. There are plenty of times we set up get-togethers with family and friends, and it will come down to the week of, and I think, oh, I'm so tired. I would rather not. That's terrible to say.
That's really nice,
but
just
it's
because
true.
several thousand are listening right
No,
now.
I'm saying, I know the
She
shame
really
on me
doesn't
saying
want
that.
us over.
I really do, but I'm saying, I'll go, oh, it's just a lot of
get
work.
it.
But once we get
Seriously.
there, I love it. I always, whether we've gone somewhere or had people over, I'm so thankful that we did it. And it's just, you have to put the effort in. And I think that's really what it just gets to the point of, we're so used to having everything else at our fingertips that we forget sometimes you have to work on those relationships and not the little things. Who cares what they had for
And
them,
I want
where
to
they
throw
were
out
at.
there too, you had asked, why? And I feel, just to kind of add
Mm-hmm.
to that, whatever happened to the, this is now the norm. Man, when I was a kid, you sat down at the table, you ate together as a family. And I know everybody comes from different backgrounds and they have different, whether it's single parents or whatever. But today, the norm, no matter what age they are, and you're a rare breed, by the way, not on technology and
I
Facebook.
know. I mean,
but that's not bad, or that's not good or bad.
I know.
That's cool that you guys can do that, because for certain people, social media is a part of your life just because it intertwines you with your business.
Absolutely.
And other things. Now, you don't need to know that Billy and Susie went to go have a dinner somewhere and they took a picture of
That's
their
it.
steak. I get that.
I know.
But the other side of it. So to answer your question, I think it's become the norm. But then where do you put that line, and where do you say, this is how we need to get together? Because to grow as a family, because you don't want to pass these types of things on to your children.
Yep.
You don't want that to be, and you want your relationship to work. I want to talk to someone.
That's
I want
it.
to look at you and say, I've got a problem, or hey, can we work this out? Because in life and relationships, if you're in a relationship and you don't like it, you have to either bond with your soulmate or say, this is not working, or we need to do something.
Right.
The stat out there today for it, I'm not going to throw this out there, but I am, there's more people getting divorced and moving in a separate area or an arena than there are people that are married. There's a reason for that. And some of it could be this exact reason, Pastor Nate, you were talking about, the technology and or stuff like that.
Yep.
So throw it to you.
So I mean, right, this is the hard thing, because technology has done so many great things,
Of
right?
course,
I mean,
of course.
Medical advances, all these things. And so it's just, we always have a hard time with consumption, right?
Right.
How much of it should we consume at one point, And when we overconsume things, whether it's alcohol, drugs, things like others, all these things, food, all of these terrible things happen. Now, the thing with technology, though, is when we overconsume it, we don't have the tangible kind of physical aspects that we see in all these other maybe vices. But the question becomes then is what can technology not give us, right? So, for example, we just moved into a new neighborhood, and it's a very nice neighborhood. I mean, it's in the city, but we like our neighbors, things like that. And we got to know our neighbors a little bit through Facebook, things like that. You add people, you say hi, you learn their names and things like that. So you know a little bit about them. You're able to Facebook stalk them, things like that, just to make sure they're not,
You said that you got Facebook stalk them.
Well, I mean, you have the duty, right? As a neighbor, that I've got to Facebook stalk you to see what
Especially
you like
when you
on
have
TV.
children
Or
and-
not. Yeah, exactly. And so, I'm not even about the kids. What kind of shows do you like? So do I have to judge you for those kind of things like that? Oh, you watch every CSI on. Well, I'm judging you now. So. So anyway, so we have this thing, and then around Christmas time, our neighbors said, hey, we're going to get our immediate neighbors together for this party at our house, and we're just going to come together. And you're thinking, okay, so it's around Christmas, okay, but what's the purpose? Like, what are we doing here? But there wasn't. It was literally just to come together, to eat a meal together as our neighbors. And there was a sense there that when we met together, when we ate together, in all different backgrounds coming together, generations. We had an 80-year-old widow there, and my young kids and things like that. There was a sense of profound connection that technology can't give us. So you have to admit then there are things that technology can do. There's connections that it allows us to have that are very convenient and even helpful. But then there's a deeper sense of community that it will lack. It will not be able to provide for us that an in-face exchange or a meal together will be able to give us. So
absolutely. I mean, I completely agree.
You don't find that, though, and I don't know how you guys are with your neighbors. I love my neighbors. I've been in the same home for 21 years. And there are a handful of neighbors, and I bond with everybody. I wave to everybody, but it's like you said, you're like, hi, but it's very tough sometimes for folks to get together because they are in their own world, as you had mentioned. But it's tough. But I love that thought. I love that process where you kind of get together and, as you would say, break bread and or just
just
bond,
right,
just to say, hey, come on over.
Absolutely. I mean, there's only like 6 houses down my road, so you pretty much know neighbors, and you pretty much know if someone, I mean, you really know what's going on, even if you don't, hang out with them on a typical basis or have coffee with them. Just you just know, who they are. They know who your kids are. You know who their grandkids are because.
Yep.
They're so,
so there's this broader sense of community then, right? So you're right. I grew up in kind of a rural area as well. Yeah. My father lives in Galena Township, which, on 9-10 acres, when you have 9 or 10 acres, your nearest neighbor is not real close.
That's it.
Right?
Yeah, it's not right next door.
It's kind of nice.
I know.
Yeah. If you're a private person, if you're introverted, it's great.
Right. I'm not.
Yeah.
It is nice.
But there's a broader sense, right? So, but you're still a neighbor in LaPorte County, right?
Right,
you still
absolutely.
have interests here, and so there's that sense, and they're finding. I was actually just reading a study done by the University of Michigan that the incoming students are less empathetic than they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. That the self-reported empathy kind of studies they do is showing, which is kind of odd for them, and they can't figure out why, because they believe that empathy was kind of hardwired evolutionary within us. So if that's true, then you should be empathetic regardless. Right. And so what they're saying is this is kind of odd because they're seeing less empathy. Now, these people could still be empathetic, but do they not have the right experiences to experience empathy, right? Mm-hmm. So if you are in overly in technology, or your community comes from online and things like that, you have no need or no experience with people that are other than you, right?
Absolutely.
Racially or otherwise, It's so there's value then when we could say, let's find space together where we can actually listen to each other's stories, where we can actually come together and say, you come from a different background than I do, but I find value in your background, you find value. So let's hear what bonds us. So let's hear what separates us, but let's celebrate those separations.
Right.
It's okay, to have these different distinctions, this individual personhood. But let's come together, though, and see what does bind our heart. So when you experience, then, somebody that's different than you, and you actually have a face to that and a name to that, your empathy can increase, right? Because then when there's a policy or when there's this idea coming out against that type of thing, you're actually thinking, this will affect somebody I know and love, But if you don't ever expand outside of your smaller community that looks like you, that talks like you, that acts like you, your empathy won't increase. So,
right. Well, I think even on a more basic, the lack of experience, it adds so much to the way you live when you do have more experiences. It doesn't even have to be anything major, but something as simple as when we're talking about the technology. I have teenagers. I have one in 10th grade and one's getting ready to turn 13. But, I noticed they don't call on the phone like we used to have no choice to call and speak to your friends or, whatever. So I think something simple one day I noticed with my daughter that's 15, her best friend, they've been best friends since they were very young children. I said, how is she was having some issues. I said, is everything okay? And she said, well, I think so. I've been talking to her all day. You talked to her on the phone? No, we were texting. There's a huge difference. I know my best friend or my sister or my mother, I don't have to even hear a sentence out of their mouth, and I know the tone of some when they're upset. And I think that what the kids miss that are too wrapped up in actually not speaking to, seeing face to face, or even talking on the phone, they miss that. They don't understand. It's harder for them to distinguish between being sarcastic, kind of joking around, or something's really truly bothering them. They don't pick up on it. Sure. And it isn't a lack of instinct. I just think it's not been their experience to have that, and I think that's a shame. And I always am preaching that to the kids, like joking about it, but I always say, you don't even know what you're missing when you do that on a regular basis.
There's this balance, right, too, because I don't connect with a lot of, I'm getting to that age now where I'm clearly separating from a younger generation
Right.
who are going to adopt technologies that I won't. Now, I'm still living in both worlds to a certain extent, but you get in your 30s, your 40s, you start growing, and technology almost, it doesn't pass you up, but you just decide,
I don't need it.
I don't need Snapchat.
I mean,
I don't need all
that.
these things,
You need it, but
You need it, but there are things like
increments.
Snapchat,
Right.
perfect example, where you
there's-
go.
Exactly.
stuff
Where
like
you
that,
think,
right.
well, I don't know if I want
I don't
to
need it.
adopt this.
Yeah.
I don't need that. Right.
So one of the hard things, though, is for people that do want to adopt this, and people do want to go there, is at least celebrate the fact that it's okay to use these things. But you have to realize that it's still not going to provide what we believe, everything you need to flourish as a human. You need community. You've been created for community. You
Right.
need relationships. When you don't have them, there's a poverty that comes from that. Now, the relationships don't have to be defined how I would define them. That's fine. But you need, So there's this ancient Jewish concept called sitting shiva, right? When somebody mourns,
Right.
there's a sense where you just go and sit with them. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to fix anything. But you sit with them because it's that sacred presence that you give
Right.
to them, and you're giving them everything you are at that moment. I can't give you more than my presence.
That's right.
And I think so. We have to remind people, right? So it's great to connect. It's great. You have more connection now than I ever have with my friends. But there's still a profound sense of connection and community and
Absolutely.
presence that text won't give you.
That's it. That's it. It's just something, the presence, the support of just being there for someone with someone. You
Yeah.
don't even have to know what to say.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter,
Because you're
is,
clearly you're sacrificing your time, you're sacrificing your energy, you're doing all that because you care.
You care.
And with a text, right? I literally right now could be talking to you and texting everyone I wanted
Of
right
course.
now. I'm not.
Rick, what is going on with you?
But no, this is what we could be doing. And so, but there's value here, right? There's value. Rick, this is why I love what you said, coming into the studio. There's value. There's value looking people in the eye. There's value looking
Absolutely.
at their how they're responding to questions. You can't tell if a question or a statement has hurt me or unsettled me
Right.
unless we're looking at each other in the eye. You
Agree.
can see my body language,
Agree.
things like that. So you can then say, wait a second, something hurt him. Well, texts don't do that.
No,
right?
Something
that's
is
what
wrong,
I'm
you
always
lose the
saying.
emotion.
You know what I
agree,
mean?
yes.
It's just a little, and I realize it is in our culture. It certainly is. The young people, that's the way they do things, and that's okay. I never want my children to think that's not okay. It's
Like,
still
get
great.
off my lawn. Right?
Yeah, exactly. It's great. It's the importance of the connection that I want them to experience, that there is a way to do things that are a little bit deeper, and you can't get that when you're only communicating,
Absolutely.
I
through
think to tie into that with YoungerLife Live, and you're looking at these ways to kind of
Mm-hmm.
get into a different groove. You tell someone in a management position, you may say to someone, okay, wait, you're going to email that person what you're feeling. Some people in the early days of emails would be emotional in their emails and go nuts and be like, whatever. That parlayed into people realizing as years went by that emails, sometimes the way you're kind of positioning that. But I've also said that about text messaging. You lose, to tie it into what you were saying, that emotion. You lose that whole thing. And then I really didn't mean to be that way.
Right.
I came off being a little bit, I'm not going to use any of the bad words, but
Right.
you came off being, I'll use the word unique. And it's like, I didn't really want to be that way.
right
Or,
when you might have been going for a little sarcasm, because
But in a
I
fun
like
way.
that's what I'm saying. I like to be a little, it's fun. So I like to.
you like to razz
be a
it.
little bit of a smart butt occasionally,
me too.
but you have to be able to. You need to make sure you're careful of who you're
Feelings.
speaking to. Absolutely.
Words are a very little part of how we communicate, right?
Absolutely.
Words aren't the only way we communicate.
Right.
And so,
Absolutely.
like you said, so you're stripping all that away when you just go to word-based communication. And so, and again, not bad things. I text all the time, but then you have to realize then what are the limitations
I
of
do
this
too.
way
Right.
of
Absolutely.
communicating. So, and then what are the values then, and how do we get involved with community, right? So this is one of the things that this is why I value church involvement, because it allows you to be around community. Now, hopefully your church has some kind of diversity there, and it's not just a kind of a holy huddle of similarities. But if it's a diverse kind of community, economically, socially, backgrounds, things like that, there's value there. There's values in different kinds of social clubs.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a church, but other different. To where
I
you're
love that
coming
you point
together.
that out. I mean,
Yeah.
there are people that struggle with their faith, and I do know.
Absolutely. Yep.
I want those people too to hear that it's okay.
Yep.
You wherever you're at in your own life, but community is important, and the being a good neighbor in the sense of being a good person to those around you in every community, whether it doesn't have to be the people on your road,
Absolutely.
Whatever group you're in, your work community, your schools that you work in,
wherever you can
it's
build
just
these
so
intentional
important.
relationships,
The
you can
intention.
neighbor, you know?
Absolutely.
And so and then one of the things I think we have to start at least adopting is a sense of risk in our relationships. That there is risk. There is risk that you can invite a coworker and their family to dinner and they say no, but it's worth the risk because they might say yes. Now you might invite neighbors over and you don't know what you're going to converse about because I have no idea what kind of similarities.
Sure.
I don't watch CSI New York, so I don't know what we're gonna talk about, kind of thing. But there's a sense where, start embracing the unknown in that, right? We're gonna find something. We're gonna find something to talk about. We're gonna find something.
That's always Rick and I's theory. We could bring anyone in here. Truthfully, you will
absolutely
find
agree.
a common ground somewhere.
Yep.
You just have to be open to talking.
But it's worth the risk.
Can I throw this out there too?
Yeah, go ahead.
I would love your input on this as you look at religion or worship. Now, I love, this is the first time you and I met, and I love your energy, your enthusiasm. All I say to people, I'm not going to be the person judging because the big G, whenever I die and I go up to wherever it is, in my place, it's somewhere in my heart that I feel is where I'm at.
Right.
But I would love to just see people go and worship and or do whatever. So if that means everybody getting together and worshiping or breaking bread or cool, so be it. Who am I to judge someone but helping them? Because you had brought up, sometimes these people may be a little bit lost, or I know people that, I have to be honest with you, haven't been to church in a while, or to a worship place, if they want to call them that, or to a mass. Well, so be it, but maybe they take that first step to go back to it. What do you feel about that? Because now you're bringing different religions together, and I think that is phenomenal, or just people together.
Sure.
You're not judging them. You're saying, I want to bond with you. So I think that's really kind of cool, and explain, and maybe I'm listening the wrong way, but is that what I'm...
No, you're right, Rick. So I think, one of our values is Christianity is best practiced looking in the mirror instead of pointing fingers, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So if you believe this, which I do, that our job then isn't to necessarily go out and point out the flaws within everyone. Our job is to look at the mirror and look at the areas of our lives where we're not demonstrating Jesus, right? Where we're choosing the path of hate over love, judgment over mercy, things like this. And it's best practice when we're looking in the mirror. Nobody wants to be, nobody wants to be the guy that's getting pointed out for everything that they're doing wrong. And I think sometimes the church has adopted that stance, and so people have just kind of rejected it. And I don't blame them, because I would as well. So then there's risk, right? There's risk in whether you're going to mass or whether you're going to synagogue, whether you're going to anything like that. There's risk because you don't know if that localized community is going to reject or embrace you, And that's honestly, it's tragic for me that a church wouldn't at least, say there's a place for you here, And so I think there are a lot of churches. Like I think one of the problems is with politics, with religion, with education, all these, we stereotype so much, right? There are terrible groups of faith out there that won't embrace, that won't allow people to sit with them, that won't allow them to have a presence within their community. There are those, but there are a lot of great communities, even in LaPorte, Michigan City, that do allow that. And there's a sense then, even when you struggle with your faith, right? I mean, honestly, I struggle with my faith. There's days where, you wonder, what is happening here? What is happening in the world? You see all of this tragedy around you. You see all of these things going around you. And if you don't have a sense of what in the world is going on, are you truly looking at the world? Are you truly feeling a sense of lament, right? There's a whole book in the Old Testament about lament where they talk about, right? This is Ash Wednesday, where they talk about the state of the world. We're sad about the injustices. We're sad about poverty. We're sad about kids that are abused. We're sad about that there's racial inequality. We're sad about all these things, and it's good. There's this good sense there. And so I know people that they want to enter into that. They're not sure how their faith works out, but I agree. There's this sense of injustice, and I want to enter into that, and I want to, I want to look in the mirror like you're looking in the mirror, and so. So I think there is a need for community. I think the church can provide a very unique place for community. I think the reason a lot of people have rejected the church is because we've forgotten our sacred calling to be connectional and communal, and that's tragic. So.
I think a lot of churches too have, no matter what denominations they are or whatever they approach, some of them approach it in a very stoic kind of, this is the way we do it, and it's A, B, and C.
Yep.
And that throws off a lot of different age groups, whether they're the youngest at heart or the wisest of years. So, you do that once or twice and then you're done. You're finito.
Yep.
You're not going back, but, it is what it is kind of attitude. But
So there's this great sense in the Jewish faith, right, that Israel, quite literally, Israel is those who wrestle with God. Jacob wrestles with an angel, right? So Israel quite literally means those who wrestle with God. So we've adopted that idea that we are the ones who are wrestling with the idea of God. We're wrestling with this concept of God. We're wrestling with what this means. If God truly looks like Jesus, then what does this mean in our life? How do we, and our calling, like Ephesians says, is to imitate God. So what does this look like to be imitators of Jesus in our everyday life? This is why we do the Pack Center. This is why we help the poor, the widow, the orphan. This is why we say, our love for people should transcend beyond just words and into actions, things like this. And so, yeah, exactly. I think we should adopt the idea that easy answers aren't always helpful. We generations that are separated by this binary distinction, right? It's either this or this. Well, I live in the in-between a lot, and I think it's okay to live in the in-between. It's okay to wrestle. It's okay to say, I'm not sure about that, it's never been a case in the church where we've said that you have to have, this checklist of answers right in order to enter into the kingdom of God. It's about faith, right? It's about this idea of I'm wrestling, I'm struggling, I'm entering into this dialogue with God about what is the nature of humanity, what is the nature of this world, how can I be a partaker of society, things like this,
And always learning.
Exactly.
Always learning. I think looking, I did watch, I watched a couple of the art of neighboring different videos, and basically I love that you pulled 3 things out of them. Bottom line, be honest with yourself too, I would say. I mean, it's not just with other people. Certainly you always want to be honest, be kind, like we were already discussing. I mean, basic stuff. And the last you say, do something.
Yeah.
And we can draw on that a little bit,
yeah,
please.
Absolutely.
Can pull on that.
So I like to, I went whitewater rafting with my father and my grandfather. And my dad's this bodybuilder, which if you can see me on camera, you know that I'm not a bodybuilder, but he's a strong guy. He owned a construction company. My grandfather, very kind of dominant kind of guy. I love my father and my grandfather who's just passed. But so we went whitewater rafting. And if you've been whitewater rafting, you know that it's the scariest, most fun thing in the world, right? Because you think you're going to die, and you might. There's a chance, right? The river is unforgiving. It's going to take you down regardless.
Absolutely.
It's not going to stop the ride, And so we're going there, and it's just me and a bunch of people from my father's gym and my grandfather, and they're looking around, who's going to be in the front, and I'm the youngest, so clearly the most expendable. They've all got, lives and more net worth than I do. So I'm going to go down and be in the front, and we're going, and we get to these rapids, and it's a lot of fun, but there's, you're also scared. And so we're going, and my dad's, right around, he's just right across from me, and my grandfather's right behind me. And you get to this one rapid, and they're preparing you for this rapid. When I say go, you need to go, because we got to get through this rapid. And so I go, and I'm just going. I mean, I am going. I'm closing my eyes.
You're praying.
Eyes closed.
I'd be like, eyes closed, praying.
Jesus, take the oar kind of thing, right? And you're going. And water's just going everywhere. And it's just this moment of chaos. And I hear my dad coming through over there. And my dad's got this booming voice. And he says, Nate, put your oar in the water. Because I'm just going in the air,
You're not even helping.
I'm not even helping, exactly. And so there's a sense where I can't tell you, and we want a laundry list of the things you have to do to help your neighbor. I don't know what those are. But if you look to do something to better their lives, something to help as they journey through life, something that can actually be a tangible representation of kindness, empathy, love to them, I think it goes a long way, right? A simple card,
Right.
a simple, stop over, like you said, how are you doing? Not actually just to text it, but to stop over
That's
there
it.
and say, how are you doing? Or, hey, I made some extra dessert. We wanted to bring this over and share it with you. It doesn't have to be complicated. Our grandparents didn't complicate this thing. It was a matter of how do we share in our life experience? And it can be simple. Just do something.
Polite manners.
Exactly.
Manners matter all the time. That's my thing to my kids.
Or know names, right? I mean, this is one of the values of the
Right.
PAC Center. Know your name. Know people's names.
Absolutely.
There's something to be said when I can say, hey, Rick, instead of that guy, because names are very important to who we are. It's a part of our identity. So if you can know a name, and when you see that person, you say, hey, Rick, how are you doing? There's this sense of, wow, you've taken enough interest in my life to actually remember my name. And that's valuable,
Absolutely.
That's something.
One of the things I want to ask you too is, while we're here, we come to the back end of Younger Life Live today. You had mentioned the poor and some of the things you're doing. How can we help out those that are listening or those that
How
are
can
viewing?
we be good neighbors?
How can we help you out? And when you say helping the poor, are we helping people locally in our area? Is it food? Is it clothes? Is it donations? Is it working on projects, maybe building homes?
Sure.
Talk to
Yeah,
us.
real quick, I'll tell you what we do at the PAC Center.
Sure,
Okay, because
please.
there's lots of really great organizations you get involved with, and it doesn't have to be at the PAC Center. It could be at anywhere. But what we do at the PAC Center specifically involves 4 different kind of ways of helping. We have a community meal where we come together, and I've mentioned that. We come together, we eat together. That's every Monday from 11:30 to 1. And then Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday, we have a food pantry where people come in and we feed about 1,300 to 1,500 people a month. It's one of the largest food providing organizations in the county, and we give groceries. And we've decided, this year, as you know, probably the cheapest food you can buy is often the worst for you.
Oh, it definitely is.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so one of the things that we realize is a lot of the people we have, a lot of our patrons, a lot of our friends that are coming into the PAC Center are also in some of the worst health. And so we're trying this year to embrace, good food, better food, more food, better food kind of thing. So if we can give more food and we can give better food, we believe that we'll be playing our part in having a healthier community. And so we want to do better. So we're doing more garden things, community gardens. It gets people together. It gets people around fresh fruits and vegetables, things like this. Then we also have a clothes pantry, and we have a resource center. When you come in and you have an issue and you have a problem, we can't fix it, but maybe because we've neighbored with all these other organizations, we can point you to where you can get some help. There's a lot of incredible organizations in LaPorte and Michigan City, just incredible, that are doing great work. And we know them, and they want to know you. Let us help you partner with them. Let us introduce you to them, kind of things. And so those are the 4 things we do. Very excited. We're really going to up our game in our community garden this year. And we do child mentorship through there, where kids come and learn. If you can teach kids to eat fresh fruits and vegetables at a young age,
Absolutely. It's my favorite thing.
it helps, right?
Yes. We talk about that often with trying to ourselves, maybe adopt a few new healthy habits. Trying to teach kids that is not always the easiest, especially if they've not done that before. So I think it's the earlier the better, and I think them getting a hand in that, especially in the city. I mean, bravo, that's really neat, because a lot of places there's not, room to
Exactly.
maybe do that. And we even had someone on and discussed indoor gardening a little bit, but even that's not the same as being out there. So
And
I
this
love
is
that.
a garden could be a shared space, right?
Absolutely.
This is where you can learn to neighbor. Is you're out and about together. You have a shared interest, things like that.
You coming back to bond with us soon?
Whenever you want, bud.
I would love that.
I
yeah.
love this. You're a breath of fresh air. It's very, very cool to have you aboard. If we want to connect with you, those that are listening or viewing right now, could you throw out a number and whatever
Absolutely.
else, please?
Connect with us either at thepaccenter.com or statestreet.tv, or go on Facebook and search for the PAC Center. That's PAX, which means peace in Latin. Or State Street Community Church on Facebook as well. Just connect with us
You
there.
see how that we learned something
I
new
love
right at
that.
the end. PAX means peace.
Right, I
like that.
I do
Somebody
too.
out there going, I like that. I'm going to put that as a tat on me.
That's
It's
funny.
you young people. It's not the old guy.
Young and hip.
Whatever,
Young and
whatever
hip.
gets
Yes,
whatever.
exactly.
That's it. Whatever
But
draws
thank
attention
you.
to peace.
So
Do
great
something
to-
nice for your neighbor
Yes.
today.
Absolutely.
Do something-
Learn the art
Hey,
of good
this-
neighboring again.
that's
Reclaim
right.
that. Yep.
That's
and
right.
you guys we've got 20 seconds. Do you guys have service times or times that you got?
Yeah, on Sunday morning it's 9 and 10:45, and then we have a Ash Wednesday service tomorrow at 6:30.
You're awesome. Thank you so much for joining
Thanks.
us again for another edition of
been great.
Younger Life Live. I'm Rick Federici.
I'm Mary Anthony.
And
I'm Nate Laux.
thank you so much for joining us. God bless, and we'll see you again for another edition. See ya.
AM 1420, WIMS, Michigan City, a Girard Media Company station.